our province is located in the northeast of Campania. Even though it is a small province compared to others, it is very rich of character and strong reasons to visit it. Starting from, of course, wines, that's why we are here, and food, but also like from historical perspective, it is a very important province. Benevento, which is provincial capital, it was a crossroad for ancient civilizations. For example, like the Egyptians who left behind artifacts that are now in a museum, second most important Egyptian museum in Italy. But actually the artifacts they found in Benevento are from Benevento. Then, of course, there were the Romans who left behind a Roman theater and the Arc of Traiano, which is monumental and beautiful. And the Lombards, of course, which left a very important footprint on the city with their walls and most famously the Church of Santa Sofia, which is now a UNESCO site.
Fascinating people with stories to share, fabulous wines and the best local foods to accompany them, and beautiful places to discover and visit. All of this and more on Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on the Italian Wine Podcast. Join me for a new episode every Tuesday. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today we travel to Campania to continue my special sub-series that focuses on this beautiful southern Italian region, its wines, its gastronomy, and things to see and do. Today we travel to inland Campania, to the province of Benevento, to learn about a beautiful wine region, Sannio, with my guest Orazio Rillo, who is speaking to us from the family Fontanavecchia Winery in Torrecuso. Orazio's father, Libero, is the president of the Consorzio Tutela Vini Sannio, so we'll gain an impression of this territory of Sannio and the wines produced. Good morning, Orazio. Many thanks for being my guest today. How are you?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Is it a nice hot day where you are?
Yeah, it's definitely hot.
Actually, you're speaking to me from Sicily. Are you on holiday now?
Yeah, exactly. But normally, even in Torrecuso, it's very hot right now.
Okay, but it's inland Campania, so the climate's a little bit different from, say, the Amalfi Coast. Is that right?
Yes, our climate is actually very different because even though it's hot during the day in summer, it is very cold during the night. I mean, actually, the temperature excursion is very high, more than cold during the evening. So the climate is perfect actually to make wines because you have this big excursion.
Now, Orazio, Sannio as a wine region is perhaps not yet well known to many Italian wine lovers. Our listeners are located all around the world. So just to begin with, can you explain where the territory of Sannio is located? Give us a visual description of your area and maybe something of a little bit about that. I know it's a very historic land going back more than 2,000 years. So just a little overview of the territory of Sannio.
Yeah, so our province is located in the northeast of Campania. Even though it is a small province compared to others, it is very rich of character and strong reasons to visit it. Starting from, of course, wines, that's why we are here, and food, but also like from a historical perspective, it is a very important province. Benevento, which is a provincial capital, is like steeped in history. It was a crossroad for ancient civilizations, for example, like the Egyptians who left behind artifacts that are now in a museum that is the second most important Egyptian museum in Italy. But actually the artifacts they found in Benevento are from Benevento because we found out that it was hosting at the time one of the most important Isis temples in Italy. Then, of course, there were the Romans who left behind a Roman theater and the Arc of Traiano, which is monumental and beautiful. And the Lombards, of course, which left a very important footprint on the city with their walls and most famously the Church of Santa Sofia, which is now a UNESCO site.
Okay, that's amazing. The Sannio name, does that come from the Samnites, the pre-Roman people that lived in this area?
Exactly. There were, of course, Italy at the time was very crowded. There were a lot of people there, a lot of different civilizations. I did just mention a few that maybe everyone knows, but when we study history at school, we see that in the central and southern part of Italy, there were all sorts of different civilizations that came, and the Samnites were definitely one of them, and that's where we take our name from. We also
Okay.
have some wines that use some names from these ancient populations in Italy.
Okay, well, that's really, really interesting. And very interesting as well, speaking of the Lombards, these Germanic tribe that descended into Italy in the 6th century through the Julian Alps in the northeast, and almost succeeded in conquering the whole of the Italian peninsula, with the Duchy of Benevento a very important stronghold for them. So we don't tend to think that the Lombards would have been so far south, but as you say, this is a UNESCO heritage linking the different Lombard sites across northern Italy and also in Umbria and in Benevento. So that's a very interesting reminder that this is a very historic area. And Orazio, it's an area where wine has certainly been made for at least 2,000 years.
Yeah, and actually, not many people know, but Benevento was actually the capital for a period of Longobardia Minor, which is not minor for importance. It was just called minor for its location, which was in the south.
Okay. And as you say, the Benevento itself is strategically located, which is why it's been important historically, with roads from Rome crossing through to go, I'm imagining, to
Brindisi.
Puglia, to
Yeah, Brindisi
Brindisi.
in Puglia. Yeah, exactly.
This wasn't the Via Appia, was it?
Exactly, precisely. Yeah,
Okay.
that's actually one of the reasons why the Arc of Traiano was made.
Okay. So the Sannio Wineries in the Consorzio was founded relatively recently. Was it 1999? Because as I say, I think we're beginning, and I'm in England, but our listeners are located all around the world. I think we're beginning to see much more, the name Sannio on wine labels, but it's still a relatively recent wine zone. Is that right? And tell us a little bit about this area and the work of the Consorzio.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm happy to hear that more and more people are knowing it from all around the world. So, the official part of it may be new to many, right? The consortio started working, as you said, in 1999, and my dad was there already, in the early years of that. And it has been president for the past 13 years. But actually, we as a company is way older than that, and as a family, we make wine way before that. My dad has been, president of the consortium for 13 years, and in this time, the name of the wines, both in Italy and in the world, has grown for sure, especially Aglianico and most importantly Falanghina. But we've been making wines with labels for 40 years. And before that, we are a family of winemakers. There is a booklet from the Italian Wine Union from 1875, which talks about Famiglia Rillo, which made wine back in 1875. It's a lot of years. It's just past the Constitution of the Italian Republic, just a few years after that.
That's amazing, and that's amazing that you were making wines in bottles at a very early age. So again, this link with the traditions of wine growing and growing grapes and making wine, I guess, have just always been in this area in Benevento and in the surrounding hills. Can we just briefly, again, looking at the work of the Consorzio, the wines that the Consorzio protects and supports? So I'm thinking of Aglianico del Taburno, Falanghina del Sannio, the Sannio DOC, and also the Benevento or Beneventano IGP. Can you just give us a brief general explanation, and then we'll look in more detail at the Fontanavecchia family story and wines?
Yeah, sure. So our wines, in terms of territory, the most important wines, sorry, are Aglianico and Falanghina. These are two most important DOCG that we have. But we also have a lot of different native vines in Sannio. For example, we make Coda di Volpe, Greco, Fiano, Piedirosso. These are all native wines from Sannio.
Okay, so there's a great range. Now, what would you say is the unique characteristic of the Sannio wine country in terms of its terroir, its situation?
Okay, so it depends on actually where you are in Sannio. There are some soils that are considered more volcanic, while others are considered more clay in a sense. But in general, I think what characterizes a lot is that since the altitude is pretty much the same around the, I mean, not the same, but it is quite high in a whole area. We have this wine that is very fragrant because it benefits from the temperature excursion that there is between day and night.
Okay. And for example, the Falangina from Sannio, what are the main characteristics of Falangina here compared perhaps to, say, Campiflegrei or Falerno?
So in Sannio, Falangina tends to have a more robust structure compared to the one in Campiflegrei, with some fruit notes that are more intense and it's a little bit more complex from an aromatic perspective.
Okay.
I think that's the main difference.
Falangina really thrives in Sannio. It's a beautiful expression of the grape.
Yeah, it is.
Turning to the Alianico del Taburno. Now, Taburno is a big mountain, isn't it? Was it also a volcano, and is this volcanic soil? How does Alianico del Taburno, for example, compare to Torasi or, say, to Alianico del Volture?
To my knowledge, Monte Taburno has never been an active volcano with our actual geological knowledge.
What's the main soil there, then, if it's not volcanic soil?
You know, we have the influence of volcans like, for example, the Campi Flegrei, which is not exactly in our area, but the soil is still considered volcanic.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's turn now to the story of the Fontanavecchia Winery. You said that you've already given us a little bit of the story, that it's gone back well over 100 years. Just explain a little bit more about your family story and about the work you're doing today.
Maybe my dad can answer this better. Ho chiesto ancora un po' di storia, che cosa stai facendo adesso?
Sì, stiamo lavorando su due binari. Da un lato stiamo puntando sempre di più sulla sostenibilità dell'azienda, cercando di spingere anche le aziende vicine del territorio a lavorare per la sostenibilità, perché la sostenibilità è una cosa molto seria come concetto, e dall'altro stiamo cercando di migliorare sempre di più i processi produttivi per avere dei vini sempre più espressivi del territorio e sempre più di alta qualità.
Orazio, the Fontanavecchia winery has long roots going back to not just to the 20th century, but to the 19th century. But you're also looking to the future. I know sustainability is very important. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing to work as sustainably as possible?
Yeah, we really believe that sustainability is one of the main pillars for our winery, but we talk about sustainability from a vast range of perspectives. First of all, sustainable must be the wine to produce for the company and for the consumer to buy. So it must be accessible in terms of the price you pay for it. We want to deliver an extremely high value for money, but at the same time, it must be sustainable from the company's perspective. So we need to have room for improvement and for going on with our objectives. But it also is important that it is sustainable from the environmental perspective, of course. As I said, we only make wine that is native to our land because that's what most naturally grows in our land. And this is very important for this reason, but also because we only use a very natural process. We try to keep the electricity within the electricity we can produce using our solar panels, for example. We only follow the protocols that are listed on the DOCG and DOC wines to deliver extremely good quality, even though we follow a strict process to make them also sustainable.
Okay. Well, let's just look at a few of your wines. I've noted that you make two sparkling wines. One's an Aglianico, vinified as a rosato. Is that right? And the other is 100% Falangina. How long have you been making sparkling wines?
Okay, so we make two sparkling wines, as you said. One is made out of Falangina, and its name is Nudo Eroico, for those who want to look for it. And the other one is an Aglianico wine that is called Principe Lotario. So the second one, the Principe Lotario, is a classic method sparkling wine that rests on the yeast for 36 months. And it has this very soft pink color to it that is also matched by the label and the decoration on the neck of the bottle. The other one is a Charmat method sparkling wine made with Falangina.
Okay. I think our listeners will be surprised to hear of an Aglianico sparkling as a rosotto. I'm sure that's very interesting to try, as well as the Falangina. Let's just turn to Falangina, your Falangina. Tell us about your wines, your Falangina wines.
Yeah, so we've been making Falangina since the beginning, even before we even had a company. Falangina is probably like one of the best expressions of what we talked about so far of our territory. It's a very fragrant and crisp wine. It has this very nice smell, very incredible book of aromas to it. We make 4 different Falanginas. The one that is the most simple one and most accessible for the consumer is the Biondore, which is a very simple Falangina. But we also make 3 more of them that are all called Libero, but we distinguish them based on where the grapes come from, because we have these special vineyards of Falangina planted in 3 different parts of our territory. One is in Torrecuso, another one is in Foglianese, and the third one is in Bonea. So depending on where the grapes come from, we decide to give them a very specific label that has the initial letter of the place of provenance. So for example, the Torrecuso one has the T letter, and it is a late harvest Falangina that also stays in wood for a couple of months.
Okay, so really you're expressing the territory of Sannio in these different expressions of Falangina.
Yes, exactly. With distinguishing these 3 types of Falangina bottles, we really want to make the consumer have a taste of what's the small nuances that there are from Torrecuso to Foglianese and Bonea.
Okay, and let's just turn to your Aglianico del Taburno reds. How many of these do you make of the Aglianico del Taburno?
Yeah, as for the Aglianico, we make 3 of them that are 100% Aglianico, and the last one is a blend between Aglianico and, it depends on which bottle you take. If you take the old ones, it was Cabernet Sauvignon. We used to make this 60% Aglianico and 40% Cabernet Sauvignon. But now we moved to making this 4th wine, which is called, like me, Orazio, with the Piedirosso, actually. But as I said, we make 3 bottles of 100% Aglianico. The first one is, again, the most basic line of it, which is the Tabarosso. But also we have 2 more Riserva wines, which are the Vigna Cataratta and the Grave Mora.
Okay, so again, different expressions of this mighty grape Aglianico from different vineyards, different terroirs.
When we make a Riserva, we usually have a greater selection of the grapes, and also the vintage is different. So it's increasing. So the Vigna Cataratta is a Riserva, the baseline Tabarosso, and the Grave Mora is also like an even greater vintage than that.
Okay. Can we turn to the gastronomy of Sannio, to some of the local foods that every visitor to Sannio should try to sample, and perhaps mention a few of the piatti tipici and the wines that pair best with them?
Yeah, sure. So Sannio has its own gems. Probably Campania is known to be one of the best regions to eat very good food in Italy, because there are like world famous foods like pizza, of course, that was born in Naples, and also mozzarella di bufala. But Sannio has its own gems. We have a lot of different dishes that are very, very simple, but really, I think, express what the territory has to say. For example, the scarpariello is a dish with the spaghetti alla chitarra made with sweet tomatoes that wants a sprinkle of pecorino cheese on top. We can consider this dish, a little bit acidic because there is the tomato, but actually tomato is very sweet. So you can either pair it with a white wine on the stretch, but I think Piedirosso goes great with it.
What is the name of that again?
Scarpariello.
Okay, and that Abruzzo is close by then as far as the chitarra. Has that always been a traditional way of making pasta in the home using the chitarra?
Chitarra is like, I think, you can say that in Italy, it's not uncommon to see spaghetti alla chitarra. It's just a shape.
A homemade way of.
Yeah, that you give to pasta, right? So you can find them pretty much anywhere. But this is traditionally a dish that we make in our gastronomical tradition. And
Okay.
one that I like a lot is ciambotto, which is a rustic mix of stale bread, beans, and vegetables that are mixed up until they become, I don't want to use the word cream, but I don't have a better word to describe it. It's almost like a cream, even though it's very rough. And depending on what you put in it, aside these ingredients, my grandma does it with only those, but maybe you can pair falanghina or again piedi rosso. Padellaccia is another local specialty. It is a very poor dish that is deeply rooted in our culture and is made with these chunks of pork, potatoes, and bell peppers. It's very simple, very flavorful, and you can pair it with yanigo, for example. And then we have all sorts of different foods. Like one lesser known one is the stuffed rabbit, which is very delicate, elegant dish that, for example, pairs beautifully with falanghina. But for example, in Benevento, they also make an incredible fried cod that I think is one of the best dish to pair with a good glass of crisp falanghina.
Is that a bacala?
Yeah, bacala, yeah.
Okay. And how is that prepared? That's just fried then, is it?
Benevento has a long tradition of bacala. We make it all sorts of different ways, but definitely fries is one of the best, and
Yeah.
especially to pair with a good glass of crisp falanghina.
Okay, that sounds fabulous. There's a great description of local foods. Orazio, are those foods that some of the typical restaurants and osterie might serve, or do you have to go into a home to sample them?
Wow, this is a great question. I think going to a hostery gives you a perspective of the local foods, even though it's not a complete perspective. For example, if we talk about ciambotto specifically, I haven't found a single place that makes ciambotto the same way another one does. And specifically, the ciambotto that my grandma makes is unique. I've never tasted anywhere else in the world, literally. And usually in Benevento, maybe they mean something else by ciambotto. It's like
Oh,
something even
okay.
completely different from what we do, and even though it's like 10 kilometers away. This is the crazy thing. I think we pretty much agree on what scarpariello is, and actually even padellaccia, we pretty much agree. I think you can taste good scarpariellos in restaurants. I'm not sure you can taste good ciambottos, good padellaccias, or things like that are very difficult to find in restaurants or in hosteries.
Sure. I think you've just described the beauty of traveling in Italy and finding foods that are so local and that pair so well with the local wines. But as you say, I mean, not only is your grandmother's always the best, I imagine, but it's very difficult to find some of these traditional foods in restaurants prepared in the old ways. But then, nonetheless, I'm glad to hear that some of these dishes will be found when people are visiting Benevento and the surrounding areas. Orazio, final question. Generally, we've said Sannio isn't yet that well known for wine travelers, for visitors. Generally, are the wineries, the members of the consortio, welcoming to visitors? Can our listeners visit Fontanavecchia?
Yeah. So our land is a land of very simple people. I think everyone is very happy to welcome everyone to visit their wineries, even though they might be not every one of them might be organized to do such things. We are becoming increasingly organized in doing so. We have been done tours of our winery for years. I remember doing some tours even myself to some American visitors in the company. Of course, you can visit the whole winery, and I think it's a very good, very very good way to see where the wine is made, how it is made, and hear the story directly from those who live it, right? At our winery, we also offer the possibility to taste the wine and pair it with some local food or local products, like, for example, salsiccia, which is an aged piece of meat that is made with salt. If you've never been there, you don't know, right? You can taste these very good food and wine pairings after, visiting the cellar. And then there is this other side of the business, which is also growing. We are giving the guests the possibility to book and then they can have an entire lunch or dinner at the company, because we have this part that is pretty much like a restaurant, even though it's only on demand, we can say. And we also made and are in the process of making more bedrooms for guests who want to stay a night or two immersed in this beautiful countryside with vineyards all around that change color during the autumn.
Oh, fabulous. And if people did book the meals in advance, would they be able to sample some of those wonderful dishes that you described?
Definitely. I think, yeah, my grandma is always happy to satisfy everyone, even though she's not directly part of the organization, but she always there to make something for the guests. I think that's one of the best things actually you can do.
Well, I think that is one of the best things you can do, and it's something that our listeners enjoy. So you've certainly made me want to visit. Orazio, thank you very much for being our guest today, for telling us about a land that is not yet discovered, Sannio, inland Campania in the province of Benevento, producing fabulous wines. The red Aglianico del Taburno, it's one of the great expressions of Aglianico, and Falanghina, this beautiful grape that goes back to Roman origins, producing crisp, fresh, beautiful white wines and other wines from the area too. You've said hospitality is developed at Fontanavecchia, so I'm sure some of our listeners will be eager to visit and perhaps to try some of those specialties that you described so well. Orazio, thank you very much for being my guest. It's been a real pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very much for hosting us. And actually, I'm very happy to hear that most of people will be happy to visit us, and we are welcoming everyone.
Grazie. Buona giornata.
Buona giornata.
We hope today's episode of Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on the Italian Wine Podcast has transported you to somewhere special. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your pods. Likewise, you can visit us at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Until next time, chin chin.